conversation. How is it going, Logan? How's it going, Brian?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Another
glad to
day.
have you out here. So, yeah, what's been going on with you guys? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Yes.
you. Yeah, me. I'm just sitting back watching the world burn, man. You know me. I'm
Yeah,
enjoying the campfire.
yeah, that's pretty interesting. Is that I know you're kind of taking a pivot out of tech, and where are you pivoting to?
I'm still in tech, but I'm moving towards finance. So yeah, I'm
Okay,
going full in on finance. I've already gotten my real estate license. Next is my mortgage lending origination license, and then my Series 3, my Series 6, my Series 7, my Series 65, and my Series 99, my CFA, my FP&A component for that, and then a bunch of private equity and real estate investment components.
Wow. That ought to do
Yeah, just a little bit.
it.
what caused you to kind of pivot towards finance and away from tech?
Money.
Okay,
Just I'd have to say it's the money.
so do you kind of hit like the limit of the tech salary, and or is
Yeah,
this
yeah. It's the only way I'm making more money in tech is if I go work for one of Satan's five fingers, also known as one of the Fang companies.
Ah,
Um, but yeah, yeah, I'm pretty much at the ceiling. I've hit the ceiling. I've been at the ceiling for a long time, to be honest. But
how does that feel?
I don't know. You can still feel. I figured a couple thousand Red Bulls in, you don't feel anything anymore.
Yeah.
right? Like what is the like around the salary range of the ceiling of non-Fang tech company? Usually about 200K or so.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna be floating around two. You might go a little under 170, 180, 190 with better benefits. You go a little bit over 230, 240 without benefits. Or any, well, let me rephrase that. You're gonna have benefits, but they're gonna be laying out.
Right.
And they were like, "We have health insurance." I mean, technically, it has a $40,000 deductible.
Right.
Right. What does the compensation look like in the finance world, like with the stuff you're doing?
Seven figures.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
you kind of get.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say the only way I'm gonna come close to that is if I go work for a FANG company or I go work for someone like OpenAI.
Do you feel like the workloads are similar between like what you're doing now and Fang, or?
No, no way, no way.
Hmm.
No, no. The number one thing about working in finance is you don't work. That's the joke.
Oh wow.
That's the joke. If you're working in finance, you're doing it wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. If you're working on the deep end of finance, yeah, you're not. It's anything but work. Like if you're doing actual work, you're doing it wrong. Now, don't get
Hmm.
me wrong, they do tons of work, but it's all front loaded and it's all automated. And so all the bigger components to the finance world is all related to socializing, networking. That's where all the real money's made. It's always made on the buy side for the most part. For very, very few exceptions, all the money's made on the buy side. And so you've already made the money by the time the relationship kicks off.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So what made you choose like this specific aspect of finance over some of the others?
Because it's never going away.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like it's never going away.
Yeah, I mean everybody's gonna need somewhere to live, so that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, like right now, I'm putting together a laundry list of high end brokers for high end watches like Paytex, Omegas, airplanes and aircraft, um, high-end boats include yachts, supercars, hypercars, things that are never going away. Like, there's always going to be a need for someone who can help you find a Pagani. It is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you make what does the transition process look like? Like getting out of tech and into that.
Well, you got to get your licenses first. That's the biggest hurdle. Well, let me rephrase that. It's the biggest hurdle from a legal perspective. Once you've gotten your licenses, the next biggest hurdle is having the network, which I already have the network with individuals with the net worth in that end, on the upper end of 8 figures or higher,
Oh, wow.
typically. And so, outside of that, it's mostly just pretty much doing whatever you kind of want. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. It's a very different world.
Mhm.
When you
How
cross,
do you know these people that are making 8 figures?
a lot of them had FANG exits. A lot of them had early entries into FANG, defense contractors that got in early on big projects that ended up going really big.
Oh, wow.
Defense contractors who started their own firm, bankers and finance guys, crypto bros that I've known since the beginning because I was there in the beginning. When the fires were first forged, I was holding the initial charcoal. Like, yeah, like I was there, Gandalf.
Yeah.
And so,
Brian, real estate something you can see yourself going into, Brian?
Yeah, I was thinking about it because my sister used to do real estate in Brooklyn.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and she was like, yeah, I think you'd be good at it just because, well, I used to do insurance sales. So she's like, yeah, it's like hardcore sales, basically, real estate.
yeah. Yeah, real estate's exceptional money, especially if you know where to go and how to manage those relationships. Perfect example was I was just talking to a guy. He's one of my buyers, and he what was that deal? That deal size was small for what I typically look at, but it was what's that deal? Entire portfolio was around there. I think that's what the number was. Yeah, that deal was only worth $700,000 for me, and so it was a smaller deal. It took me 3 days to find a buyer.
Hmm.
And so that was one of his source deals for a portfolio of 8 trailer parks. I think is what it was, and the aggregate value for that was about $735 for me in terms
Oh
of
wow.
yeah.
So you like start off getting your certificates, and then once you got those, like, what do you do next? Like you sign on
Well,
with
they're
a
not
company, or
certificates, they're licenses. They're
okay, license.
different. Yeah, and I draw that distinction because anyone can pretty much sit for a certificate. Anybody can take a certificate. Typically, there's very
Sure.
few exceptions
Sure.
that can't. Whereas then with a license, they typically have prerequisites of some kind. Like for instance, my real estate license, it required a mandatory 3-month course, and so I had to
Oh,
sit
wow.
every single night or every other night for like 4 hours a night for 3 months to be able to take a test, to pass
Wow.
that test, to pass another test, to be able to sit for my state board license to get my license. And so it's not just something you can just go take. I had to pass 2 tests just to be able to take my license test.
So they really put you through the ringer.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's got a high washout rate. Perfect
Yeah.
example was when we started class. I think there was like 70 people. When we finished class, there was like 20 people, and I
Oh,
was the
wow.
first person to pass the license out of like I think I want to say 4 to 7 people. So 10%
Oh, wow.
actually
Okay.
passed the license in
Interesting.
total start, and that's a high pass rate.
So you were the first one to pass out of your cohort?
Yeah, I'd sat for my exam probably 7, 8 days after graduation of the program.
Okay.
I would have taken it sooner, but I fucked up my booking date because I booked way too late. Yeah, apparently you're not allowed to do that. So, yeah, I had to wait.
So I know you kind of just getting started in it, but what do you see like as the difference in skill sets required in tech versus real estate?
Social skills, right out the door,
Mm.
I would say. I've got 7 years ahead of most of my colleagues. I got into real estate a long time ago. I just never got my license. Um, I've studied it for a very, very, very long time because that's where the real money is. There's a direct correlation to the number of persons on the Forbes list and the number of people who hold real estate holdings. And that's over 80% of everyone on the Forbes list.
Oh,
Mm.
wow.
Yeah. Not saying that, everyone that's rich buys real estate. I'm just saying that 4 out of 5 people on the Forbes list have real estate holdings.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
There may be a correlation there, but correlation is not causation. But when, 4 out of 5 people show up to the party, probably the place to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know like unlike tech, you can't really just sit around and be in your own world. What does like the real networking look like? Hitting up parties, or how do you get
Yeah.
around the real clients?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, you can be commercial, you can be residential, you could be multifamily, you can be single family homes. You could do um, focus heavy on commercial rental units, medical space. It really depends on what you want to do. Me, I'm going investment opportunities. I don't really care about, small end houses. I'll do houses and single families for people that I like. But I'm not even looking at a house less than $500,000. It's just not even worth my time.
Now, are you going to be flipping houses?
No, I only recommend doing build to rent.
Okay.
If you're
Okay.
doing houses, I only recommend build to rent. The margins are significantly superior on the build to rent side. And if you ask any builder, they'll tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
It has the best margins by a landslide.
So just for the
Yeah.
audience who may not know, what build to rent is, like you're building the house and then just renting it out.
Yeah, you're building you're building houses with the intent of turning them into rentals, never intending on selling them.
Got
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
And you said the margins are significantly higher doing that versus
Oh, yeah, you'll
okay.
typically out the door, you'll start with 25, 45% equity in the property automatically. And then on top of that, then you're rolling into rentals because the financing terms are exceptionally friendly because of your high um, equity in the deal. You're getting typically much better terms on your overall portfolio. Typically, probably going to be a PLOC of some kind, and then with that, you're literally just burning down the units, or you're spending them off and separating them as portfolio loans, and then you'll have 50, 60 units, and then as you're finishing a unit, you'll separate it off of the construction line of credit, and then you'll just turn that into its own outstanding um, effectively mortgage note, unless you
Hmm.
just do a HELOC, in which case you just have one massive line of credit that overarches all of them.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and PLOC is short for portfolio equity line of credit.
Interesting. Brian, which real estate sector were you thinking about getting into?
I was thinking more flipping houses.
It's not a bad place to be if you like to flip, but me, I like cash flow. You'll make money doing flipping for sure. The
Yeah.
issue is finding a deal, finding construction, teams
Right.
that you can
Right.
depend on, and then having access to that capital to be able to do the flip itself. Or you're leveraging bridge money, typically on terms, typically not very great terms.
So, like, you need a lot of cash up front to flip
Oh,
houses?
yeah, or credit. Typically, a lot of people, what they'll do is if they have significant numbers of credit cards laying around with high balances,
Yeah.
high lines, um, they'll typically just flood everything on credit cards, and then they'll just flip everything out. You're still paying for money. It's just how you're paying for money.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, man. Yeah, I don't know if I got the social skills to be able to jump into that field.
Got to be an extrovert.
Yeah, kind of a loner, so.
Yeah, it's not too bad. But yeah, private wealth is where the real money is.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much near the ceiling of tech. So it's not too much further that I can go. So I got to start thinking outside the box. Probably like investing in social media and expanding my presence that way.
I wouldn't spend your time on social media. All the
No.
people that are worth knowing are rarely on social media. That's why you rarely find me on social media.
Right. How do you get around the real players, like the power players?
You go where the real people are.
So like
Anybody,
Which is
anybody that's in the 8-figure or higher space are typically eating at the same places, staying at the same clubs.
Hmm.
They've got subscriptions and services at the same places. They're pretty easy to find if you know where to look. So
where do you look?
it depends on where you are. I mean,
Yeah.
are y'all both Texas?
No, I'm in New
No, he's
York.
New York.
New York. Bro, you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody. Yeah, it's for y'all it's too easy. Nightclubs. Anybody that's got a table at a nightclub. Any of the marina clubs. New York has a bunch of car clubs.
Okay.
I can see that.
Yeah, I've got a barbecue I've got to go to sometime this year at a car club in the UK. And so,
Oh, in England?
yeah, I'll be jumping on a bird and flying over the pond.
Nice.
Yeah, I've heard cigar lounges are another place.
Yeah, typically.
But
Yeah,
like,
usually the guys that have their own humidors there are typically the guys you want to know.
Oh, what
but like,
about poker games?
Poker games not so much.
Not so much.
Not unless it's a charity game, and they're typically. And the fun part is the guys that you want to know are the guys that are typically betting $1. It's usually the dollar. And yeah, and you think I'm joking, but yeah, it's usually $1 because those are the kind of guys that are like, "What's your net worth?"
Right.
And then they're like, "Okay, I'll flip that." And that's the difference. It's like either we gamble for $1 or we gamble for your entire net worth. There is no in between.
Right.
It's like I have a car outside that's worth your entire aggregate value.
right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys will chest check you just to giggle. Like just to feel alive for a minute.
So if you don't have like money or clout, like how do you even strike up a conversation with these guys?
A lot of them have problems. They have unique problems with problems. And it's figuring out how to solve their problems.
What's their biggest problem?
Typically, it's access. I mean, one guy I was just talking to had a particular interest in a specific Rolex. Another one wants an Omega, a specific Omega. Right now, I'm looking for one guy. He's looking for a very specific car with a very specific color, with a very specific drive shaft type, with a very specific interior. And so it's like there's like 12 of them on the planet, apparently.
Oh, wow.
And I found 2 of them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never, yeah, I'm pretty sure that right now I'm limited by my lack of network. And so I think I got to kind of dial back on the technical studies. And
you didn't listen, man. I told you your network is your net worth.
Yeah, it's true, man. But I think, like with networking, you got to network with purpose too. It's easy to kind of go to events and, you just meet people, but they're not really,
Well, you got to know who you're meeting.
Right.
And you gotta, the first question I always ask is, it's a twofold question, and it's very important to ask. And a lot of people say it's very selfish, but I don't. I think it's very selfless, which is, what value do you provide to me? now and in the future? And what value do I provide to you now and in the future? And if you can't provide a value to me, or I can't provide a value to you, then this isn't a relationship that should exist.
Right.
Because there's nothing that either of us can do for either of us. So neither of us are going to have our goals furthered, but both of us are going to be required to spend energy to maintain a relationship that provides value to neither of us.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, that's the tough part right there. Like thinking, well, I got software development skills, but aside from that, it's hard for me to think of what exactly I could provide to some rich guy.
Right.
Yep. How can you solve somebody's problem? It's a fair question.
Yeah, I guess you just have to learn to fish it out of them, like just have a general conversation, and kind of fish for what needs they have, because they usually don't just tell you straight up, do they?
No, absolutely they do. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're typically the kind of people that'll immediately tell you their immediate blockers and problems.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I haven't really been around that circle, so.
Yeah, most
Now,
people
what-
that are high performing, they don't beat around the bush when it comes to problem solving. They have issues, and they will listen to any solution that could potentially solve that problem for them.
What generally are their problems?
Funny enough, it's women.
Really?
Number one, yeah. Number one is women. Number two is stuff. You would think those would be the things that they would have the least trouble with. Yeah. It's typically the biggest frustration for them.
Oh, wow. And how come?
I have no idea. That's been my number one.
Strange.
Like, why are they having these issues has been my maintained issue. Like, why would you have an issue with like a watch? Why would a watch be a problem for someone that's worth 9 figures? And then you're just like, these are commercially produced watches. But that's when you start getting into a world of it's a one of one watch. And you're like, it's a $5 million watch. And they're like, most people would say, oh, well, it's $5 million. To a billionaire, $5 million is nothing. Yeah, but see, the issue isn't the fact that it's $5 million. The issue is that it's a one-on-one watch. They didn't buy the watch because it's $5 million in order to go up in value. They bought the watch because it's the only one. They have the only one. It's something no one else can get. And so how do you get someone who doesn't have an issue with money to let go of something that they can't get again if they let it go? And it's solving that puzzle that's the real problem that most of them can't solve, which is, if I've got one of 12 supercars in the world for this certain model, how do I get the other 11 guys to give up their car?
Right.
Or it's the other 12 because I don't have one.
Right. Yeah. How do you go about like procuring those kind of goods, or, aligning them with the person who can?
Yeah, exactly. And then that's finding out what they want, and then finding what they want, and then finding out what that person wants in order to let that thing go. And then you just have to effectively backstop that over and over and over again until you find all the pieces of the puzzle, and you get to the final person, and you're like, okay, well, if I get this, I can get that, 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 I can get the one of one watch.
Okay, so you're kind of like the middleman who negotiates, like kind of like bargains between all the parties and see if there's any aligning interest, and if there is, kind of like, okay.
Yeah, you have to ultimately, you're playing the ultimate game of Where's Waldo in simple terms. And it's, once you find Waldo, you have to find the Christmas Waldo, and then the Easter Bunny Waldo, and then the Valentine Waldo, and then Waldo at the park, and then Waldo at the water park, and then Waldo at the theme park, and then Waldo in space to find medieval Waldo, and then bring the sword of Waldo to the guy in space to get the asteroid Waldo, to get the space machine parts, to get the space drilled to get the gold in the center of the asteroid.
Interesting. So like around these circles, how important is like having a look, like dressing well, having a certain car, etc.?
I dress like me. They dress like them. Matter of fact, most of them you wouldn't even know are millionaires and billionaires.
Interesting, because I know, like, I guess just certain circles that are not really that upper crust wealth. They want to look like they have wealth, but maybe that's
Right.
all just a look.
Yeah, the typically what you'll find is the people that are trying hard to look like they're wealthy typically aren't.
Right.
That's been my I guess. Well, I mean, I've done that for a long time, but when you actually start to see it, you start to laugh because it's like the people that don't have it, they're typically like, I drive a Lamborghini, check out my Lamborghini. Or they're like, yeah, look at my Rolex Daytona. And then like you're like, I wear a
Yeah.
$900 cologne. Yeah. And it's like, that's cool, man. What's your finance DTI right now?
All right.
Is it in the 80 or 90%? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like you're stretching yourself to the max to look like you got it. And it's like other like it was so funny. It's like the other day I was with one of my mentees and she's sharp, man. She's sharp. And she was like, I tagged you for top of the food chain pretty quick. And I was like, how so? And it's like, I'm just wearing flip flops, busted up flip flops, and Walmart shorts. And she's like, yeah, but you're carrying a $700 leather bag.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I know rich people do kind of like prefer more understated stuff, like the watches are going to be the flashy super diamonds everywhere.
No, they don't typically wear that stuff. Now they might, if they have like a watch that they like that they're showing to their buddies or something. But typically, yeah, they'll wear something that's more toned down. They don't wear anything crazy like that. Now they'll have their watch collections. Absolutely, I've seen one guy. I'm looking at getting a hold of here pretty soon. I think he has 200 watches.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then there's another guy that I've got to get a hold of. He's got. I'm actually not getting a hold of him because I want to get a hold of him. I'm actually getting a hold of him because the guy that I want to do business with wants to get a hold of him. So I'm getting a hold of him so I can get a hold of the guy that I want to do business with. And so he collects supercars, and he's got I want to say 59 supercars right now.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
He's probably got about 75, $80 million just in cars.
Crazy.
Like how is a guy like that? Is he like usually laid back, pretty cool,
Yeah.
or are they high strung? Okay.
Yeah. You don't typically get to the top of the food chain by being an asshole. It's just like in the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, washout points typically 5 to 10 million.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too
What's
familiar with that.
funny is you're talking about dress. Like when I was spending time out in LA, it would be like the more homeless the person looks, the more money they have.
Yeah. A perfect
Yeah.
example of that is videos from Monaco. It's like you're looking at a dude and he looks like he's like in his 70s to 80s and he looks like he just crawled out of the dumpster. That dude's wearing like $90,000 worth of designer clothes and he
Right.
crawls into the back of a fucking like, $30 million car.
Yeah, when you got that kind of money, you don't really need to prove
Yeah,
nothing.
you don't care what people think.
That's crazy. Like those who don't really have it, they care more. Like they want to look rich.
Well, their mistake is they care what people think.
Right.
That's why they have the problems that they do.
It's like new money versus old money.
I wouldn't say that. I would say more so it's a good way to word this. Hang on. It's real money versus faux money. That's a good
Hmm.
way to put it without pissing in somebody's Cheerios. It's real money versus faux money. People who struggle to make people think like they're successful typically try really hard to look successful. Whereas in people that are successful typically are too busy to care. That's why they
Right.
don't really care what you think about them because one, they probably don't know. But they don't give you the time of day. They're not paying attention to you. You're not a person of relevance in the first place. Because people that are relevant aren't taking pot shots at other people.
Right.
Like it's just not something that they do. And because it's one, it's a very small world. The oxygen's very thin. The higher up you climb, and so pissing off somebody is very fast way to piss off a lot of people indirectly by accident.
Sure.
And so because it's like, okay, you pissed that guy off. All right, well, you pissed him off. Well, he didn't go and buy the cars that he was going to buy today because he's too pissed off to go to the car dealership. And so he didn't buy the 4 cars that he was going to pick up today. So the guy that was going to sell him those cars is pissed off at you because he's pissed off at you because of the fact that you pissed the guy off that was going to buy the cars, and therefore he didn't buy the cars. And then because he didn't buy the cars, he couldn't sell the other cars or the boat that he was going to get as part of the trade. And now another guy's pissed off at you because now he's not getting his boat because the car deal didn't go through.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different world, from what I'm used to.
Yeah, it's a very different world. I enjoy it. It's like the ultimate game of it's a good way to
That's
describe it.
right. At that point, it's all about balancing like relationships and
Yeah.
learning how to socialize.
Yeah, it's it's like Sims meets Civilization 4 or 5.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Strategic socializing.
Yeah. Yeah, the key component is having the relationships. More importantly, it's providing value and utility. And that's one of their biggest issues is utility.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, how do you generally approach people?
I just walk up to them and talk to them.
Yeah.
Isn't that how you approach people? I mean, I could blow the door off the hinges, but
Yeah.
I don't need to make that kind of an entrance. Not anymore.
Yeah, I think if you just treat, especially rich people or, famous people like they're regular people and you don't go all crazy fan mode, then they
Yeah.
take to you a lot better.
Yeah, it's something that they're actually very much so annoyed by is the fangirling. Now, it's to an extent. It's like, oh yeah, man, I've seen your videos. They're super awesome. Like, that's fine.
Hmm.
But if you're like, oh my God, can I get a photo? Like, yeah, that's like,
Right. Yeah.
like, yeah, like there's a level of that, but it's yeah, it's one of those. It's like validation of who they are from what they do for their work or their trade craft, but not like like screaming and screeching like some howler monkey or something that you see off of one of the groupies from like a Van Halen concert or something.
Right.
That
Yeah,
makes sense.
man. It's cool that you're making a transition, man. I'm seeing, a lot of people kind of transition away from tech. It's not like the
Yeah.
sexy shit it once was.
Well, for me, I'll still be in it and around it for the foreseeable future, but for the long term, it was never my long term goal, anyways. It was always a
Right.
stepping stone to where I wanted to be.
So, you've always wanted to work in finance?
Yeah, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been my long term goal since like 2011, 2012, and even before then.
And so, what steps have you been taking to work towards that?
Building a bank.
Yeah.
1 second.
But yeah, that's definitely interesting. I got a friend named Brian. He's in tech, but he wants to transition over to real estate as well. So
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong, tech is awesome, but the reality has always been tech has been and will always be blue collar. It's blue collar work, whether people like to admit it or not.
hmm,
It may be well paid blue collar work, but it's still blue collar work.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the real distinction between blue and white collar?
These days, that line is very much so blurred. And in layman's terms, it's whether you work in a field or work in an office. In historical definitions, in my personal opinion, that definition has changed from it's where your money works for you versus you work for your money.
Mm.
That's
Yeah,
the definition.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the more I would say that's the more truer definition of white collar versus blue collar.
Yeah, we're pretty much in a time where if your money isn't working for you, you're gonna get left behind because I
Yeah,
don't feel
well, I
like.
think there's a popular saying that says if you're not making money while you sleep, you'll work till you die, and that's
Yep.
a very fair.
Right.
Yeah, that's typically the first thing that I move for most of my clients, aside from analyzing your initial finances and identifying your current exposures from a financial perspective and de-risking you, is moving towards acquiring you truly passive incomes. It's actually kind of surprising how many people think that they have passive income and they in fact don't. It's actually it's turned into a game for me. It's so entertaining. It's like how quickly can I kill your dreams? And the answer is typically within 30 seconds. Um,
Yeah.
I have 4 questions that effectively round off your entire ideology of what passive income is. And yeah, yeah.
So would you say like residual income is passive income?
Well, define residual income. Here we go.
Well, let's say you're freelancing as an insurance
No,
broker.
it's an immediately no. Because do you have to do work in order to be an insurance broker?
Well, what do you mean?
Do you have to do work? Do you have to pick up the phone? Do you have to call clients? Do you have to?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Then it's not passive income. It's active income. You have a
I,
job.
s- I see.
Bang, dead. 30 seconds. Told you. Yeah. Yep.
Or do you I know, with the way things are going, do you find like investing in the stock market as wise, or should we be moving to tangible assets?
It'll always be a viable option. Ultimately, the ownership in businesses that cash flow will always be a viable opportunity for truly passive income. That rolls back to the days of the Rockefellers and Vanderbilts. And I think it was J.D. Rockefeller that says, I think it was like I think how he worded it was the only thing that I enjoy waking up to every day is my dividends. I think
Hmm.
it summarizes the saying. I'll look it up for you really quick.
Have you done any investing, Brian?
I've messed around with day trading for a little bit, but it's pretty much gambling. So.
Yeah, well, the saying is, do you know the only thing that gives me pleasure? It's seeing my dividends coming in.
Ah.
Yeah, Rockefeller. John D. Forever ago.
Yeah, I think we're at a time where we're not going to have Social Security, so
Right.
you're going to have to figure how to generate enough passive income to survive.
If you want to have a bad time really quickly, the fastest thing that you can do is go online and look up on socialsecurity.gov, SSA.gov, and look at your Social Security history, how much money you've paid in, and what your benefits are going to be, because it will give you that information.
Yeah, I don't want to depress myself.
No, you don't. It's going to just blow your world to holy hell in a handbasket, because if you understand anything about compounding interest, you'll know the amount of money that you see on that form and the amount of money that you've paid in and the amount of money that you're going to pay in over time relative to the time frame versus how long you're going to get payouts for. You're going to understand you're getting completely and utterly screwed if you make anything above $75,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. In simple terms, Social Security doesn't exist for people that are financially successful. Social Security exists to vampire off of people that are financially successful at their expense, almost unilaterally, to pay for people that never tried at all. And I
Right.
say that with 100% confidence because I've got a laundry list of people that were janitors and cleaners and librarians that are worth $5 to $35 million.
And how do they move up?
They didn't. They just stayed there the entire time and made investments throughout their entire career. They lived below their means and they made proper investments, and their investments did well. Compounding interest is a hell of a drug. It is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
The eighth wonder of the world. It really is a hell of a drug, man. Like, time and market is everything.
Yeah, so like when people first get into tech and get those big salaries, they just buy like the stuff they always wanted to buy, but they should be investing and saving.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can still buy the stupid shit. It's just I recommend that you finance said stupid shit.
Mm.
Yeah. And I recommend that you get something that's reasonable stupid shit, like an i8 or an Audi R8 or, a Porsche 911 or something of that nature.
Right.
Yeah. It's a supercar without the super tag.
Right. What's the most you would spend on a car right now?
$350? Maybe. I might do
Like,
$450 for the right car.
okay. Like what cars are at the top of your list?
You put me on the spot. Hang on. I mean, right now I'm looking at that damn Stingray. I really like that Stingray, but it's at the low end. It's like when I was looking at was like 85. The 06 was like 160 loaded. I mean, a Huracan is always a good bet. You're not gonna kill yourself in that anytime soon. McLarens are nice, but you will kill yourself in that because they'll let you. It has about as many safety features as a 1940s toaster oven.
You like any like trucks or anything?
Not really. Not really. I mean the F-150. I think it was the Raptor or something. Looked pretty nice. The T-Rex looks pretty good. From Dodge, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I'll always be a fanboy for King Ranch. I'm a Ford family kind of guy. But trucks, for the most part, not really. I mean, trucks are for working. I mean, if you're looking for something pretty, you're going to get it like a Cadillac truck or something stupid like that.
Right, like Escalade or something.
Yeah, unless you want to just go
SUV.
totally, over the top and you're getting something like bulletproofed, in which case you're just going something totally crazy and specialized. And then you're looking $300,000-$400,000 into a truck. But, you're looking at something that's effectively an assault vehicle with a commercial brand attached to it. But, yeah.
What do you think about that Cybertruck?
I think it's a waste of money. The fact that they have to harass and effectively threaten people with a $50,000 fine for trying to effectively offload it because they can't keep it because it doesn't fit into their parking space says everything that needs to be said about both the vehicle and the brand.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't find those kinds of clauses with Lamborghini or Ferrari. They don't have to threaten their buyers.
Yeah, that's the only vehicle I can think of that you have to get permission to sell. Like you don't really even own it.
Yeah, and it's not even the fact that you have to have permission to sell it. It's the issue that you have an issue with even being able to transfer it. and that's not even selling, because selling it infers that you have control because you've received it. You can't even transfer your interest in the purchase, and that's a big issue. Like for some people, it's well, a perfect example is the layoff. It's some people have been on order for years, and back when they were going to buy their truck, they had the money because they had a job, and now they don't have the money because they don't have a job. Which, in all fairness, you shouldn't have bought a vehicle you couldn't outright afford in the first place.
Sure.
But being reasonable and not completely ice cold. And this isn't Gitmo. I'm not here to drown you in your own failures, or those of others that are just so happening to cascade into your life and capsize your boat. But yeah, if you have to threaten those kinds of people that are already finding themselves in very precarious conditions to begin with, it speaks very poorly of your brand. Um, good companies don't threaten people in bad positions. They just
Right.
work around the issue. And if transferring your interest in your purchase, um, if transferring your interest in your purchase helps you to do that and helps the company to still sell the car at the end of the day, that that really is what speaks to the brand. Like Porsche isn't going to come after you if you can't afford to buy your GTR 3 slot for some reason. They're just going to let someone else buy it. They don't really, the Axeman isn't going to cometh for you and be like, "Yo, we're going to fine you if you don't buy this Porsche." It's like, "Nah, man, that's totally cool. We get it. Like, we'll see you next go round." There's no hard.
Right.
They're not the perfect indicators. They're not sweating for the money. They're not like, "Oh my god, if I can't sell this car, I'm gonna miss our quota and the company's gonna die." Like Porsche could care less. The laundry list is years long for something like a GTR 3. And so it's like, okay, sorry to hear that, man. You want to you want to sell some of your other cars to make yourself more liquid? Like that's the kind of questions they're asking. They're trying to help you solve your problem. They're not trying to make your life harder. And so, and again, that's kind of like when you're in that world, that's where you're at. Like a perfect example was the guy I was talking to like a week ago. Like guy just showed up and he was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to get liquid to buy another vehicle." So he just offloaded two Z06s that he had. Like they were just toys that he had laying around, and that's $130,000 that he got for each car. And it's like he just went 260 cash to go buy something else. And I'm like, that's how the world really works at the higher end levels. So when you want to start talking cyber trucks and stuff, it's one of those things where it's like, what's the cost of a cyber truck? 60, 80 grand? Yeah, cyber truck.
I think leaning more towards 80.
Yeah, probably. I would say 80 sounds good. Yeah, 80. Yeah, it was 60 to 79.90. The Beast, Cyber Beast model is 990. And then yeah, used prices and some resellers are asking for as high as 180. And this one says 80 to 102 between cars and driver. I mean, CNN says over 100K. I guess it really depends on your upfits and stuff. But I mean, end of the day, it's what, 100K? We'll say 100. We'll say 150 to be generous. You're talking entry level supercar, or I guess in this instance, super truck.
Right.
Yeah, but again, if you're having to threaten people,
Yeah, there's something there.
yeah, like yeah. I mean, I can't speak to the finances of Tesla. I don't care enough about Tesla to look into it. They're a tech company, not a car company, and I have too much exposure to tech companies. So,
What about you, Brian? What kind of vehicle would you push if you just had the cash?
Oh, that's a good question. I like Mercedes.
Okay. Yeah, Mercedes are
Yes,
nice.
like a S550.
Hmm. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, I like the BMW i8, Audis.
Okay. Yeah, Audis are nice.
Let me see. What's the
Now,
Acura NSX?
if I had the money, I'd probably pick up some kind of a Pagani. But yeah, I
What is
don't.
the
Yeah,
what
I
is the
don't have
name of that?
the world money. Like,
How much are those running?
most of them that I've seen are like 3 million or more.
Oh wow,
Yeah, like the Yesco or something.
those are pretty much garage queens, ain't they? You don't just daily drive those.
Well, I mean, when you're buying a car with that kind of money, I mean, you typically have the money to drive it however you want. But yeah, the Yesco is like, I think that a 2021 Yesco is 3 million, and so I think the newer ones are 5 million, and then some of the higher end Bugattis are like 3 to 5, depending on what you're looking at.
Yes, it's pretty interesting how some people just have so much money that $3 million purchase is nothing to them, whereas like for the average person, that'll be life changing.
Well, the thing you got to remember too is when you start talking those kinds of price points, the cars don't depreciate; they appreciate over time. You're not talking about a Honda Civic anymore. You're talking about vehicles that maintain their value or grow up in value over time. And
Right.
that's why I typically recommend cars like Porsche. Certain types of Porsches, they typically do this number when it comes to value. They go up and they go down depending on the day. But certain types of Lamborghinis, certain types of Ferraris, certain types of Bugattis, they do well. Resale value kind of sucks right now because a lot of people are still trying to figure out the maintenance cost of ownership basis. But that depending on how good you are at shopping mechanics and shopping servicing, which is why it helps to know a guy like me. I mean, your bill can go from $100,000 a year for cost of ownership down to 20. Just
Oh
knowing
wow,
who can save you $80,000 a year. Yeah,
yeah,
guys like me
yeah,
pay for ourselves typically in the first day.
yeah. Well, I wonder what those mechanics on those high end cars what they're making.
More than enough to where they'll be very happy and comfortable, especially if they own the shop.
Yeah, I
For
wonder if
sure.
Yeah. Yeah, the last quote for something that I saw, I chuckled at was it was $9,000 plus VAT tax to fix a mirror switch.
wow.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at a BMW bicycle, not bicycle, motorcycle, and they were telling me like $3,000 replace the light if something happens. So yeah,
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah,
yeah, I don't even want to imagine what it costs for like the really high end cars.
yeah. I'm honestly not a fan of BMW. I'm not a fan of BMW because I feel like they take advantage of their user base. A lot of their maintenance costs, when you look at the overall cost of ownership, even from third parties, they're typically the worst on the list. And so the first thing I would bring up is if you're supposed to be a high end car, that's a high quality engineering car, then why is your shit cost the most to get fixed, and why is it in the shop more than anybody else? The only thing that, to the best of my knowledge from the last list I looked at, the only thing that was in the shop more than a BMW was a Land Rover, which I do not recommend you buy. The average cost of ownership for a Land Rover is $15,000. And as a percentage basis for the cost of the vehicle, that's per year. And
Oh
so,
wow.
as a percentage of cost basis, it's one of the
Wow.
worst cars you could buy in terms of ownership and maintenance. A car should never cost that much as a percentage basis as an ongoing effort to maintain. Now, if
Yes,
you're
sir.
talking like a Bugatti or something at, 60, 80, 100,000, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of markup there because they make their money on the fleet. And there's also the whole component of the fact that I think it was the Veyrons, they lost 50% on the car. And so, like, they pulled a Sony and they sold the car at a loss to get the cars into fleet status so that they could make money on service, which is definitely where the cost comes from. They definitely get you on the back end with cost of ownership. But I've never heard anybody complain about owning a Bugatti other than the cost of ownership. It's a really nice car. It's actually I'm actually going to go down to Miami here pretty soon to meet with one of the car dealer guys that I know. They're almost like a rental broker kind of guy, and they've got one, so I want to play with it. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm gonna drive a Bugatti. It's gonna be fun.
When you headed down there?
Probably here pretty soon. I just got back from Tampa. I was gonna stay down there and
Okay.
hop in and check in some stuff, but I had other things I had to get back up here for, so I couldn't stay too long. But next,
You're in Georgia, right? Georgia?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not too bad here. New York's better though in terms of access to clients.
Yeah.
Typically, the clients that I want to meet with are only going to be there for certain events. Most of the time, they're not in New York. They're not living in New York anymore. It's just a meeting point. New York and Miami.
I've heard something pretty interesting in Dallas. They're about to create a new stock exchange. Have you heard that?
Yeah, and they are. And they're doing that because of the fact that they want to pull all the capital away from New York. New York has been pissing off a lot of people for a very, very, very long time as a state. And as I've continued to warn people, which I've been saying for a long time, the blue states are going to continue to piss people off to the point where they just end up becoming the next Detroit. And I said it was going to be California and New York. And California's already there. California's at a $70 billion deficit from a $60 billion surplus in 2 years. And it's about to get worse because they're about to go after their small business sector to make up the difference. And the issue is there's no money there to make up the difference. That's why they're all doing layoffs right now. It's because they just increased the minimum wage, which I warned against. And I warned against the mass layoffs that was going to cause. And it did. A perfect example was Pizza Hut was just in the news after laying off all their drivers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I also heard California, they're trying to impose like 30 cents per mile driven because the shortfall from everybody going
Because they
electric.
forced all the EVs. Yeah, they forced all those EVs to be bought. And now that they don't have any more gas tax. And now they're trying to charge 30 cents plus per gallon of what they would make on a gallon of gas. They're just trying to charge EV drivers. Right now, it's a 6-month temporary, but as I've said continually, there's nothing more permanent than temporary in government. And so what they're pretty much testing is it going to be an all-out mutiny to the point to where people just literally start burning buildings down again? And if they don't do that, then they're going to take that tax and charge everybody.
30 cents a mile is insane. Like if you drive 10,000, that's what,
Well,
like 3,000.
you got to remember that the federal deduction per mile is 63 cents. So they're taking half of your mileage deduction as a tax. And so they're wiping out half of your mileage credit. That's a
I feel
huge deduction, especially for a small business. It's one of their biggest. And the
right.
fact that they're going after that, it's going to crush and destroy the average small business. Because you got to think, if the average small business has just got one delivery truck, and that delivery truck is doing, we'll say 53. No, we'll be more accurate. We'll say 100,000 miles a year because they're replacing their trucks every 3 years. So it's 100,000 miles, right? Well, just owning that truck is going to cost you $33,000 a year.
Right, just in taxes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. Like
Here's the other fun part. What they didn't say is they weren't going to charge that tax to people who drive gas vehicles.
Oh,
They said
wow.
they're going to charge you 33 cents a mile. You have to listen to the language. And so people who are paying that gas tax are going to end up paying that gas tax twice over, most likely.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And so you're paying that tax for the gas, and then you're paying a separate tax to drive. The whole point of getting the EV was so you didn't have to pay gas. And now that cost, and this is the thing, that cost basis on buying those EVs was predicated on the basis that you save money on gas. Now that cost savings is gone because you're getting charged per mile, what are the finances on your EV now? What is the value of your federal tax credit now?
Right.
If you get a $6,000 a year tax credit, well, fantastic. You've got a $33,000 tax bill for, the 100,000 miles a year if you're doing some kind of mass movement with Tesla cars, or if you're doing just generic driving because you bought one, you're doing 30, 40,000 miles a year like the average American is. Well, you're paying $10,000 a year to own the car and drive it in California.
Sure.
They're about to kill their entire economy. I'm going to sit back and, like I said, I'm going to continue.
California?
Yeah. I'm going to sit back and continue to laugh as California blows itself up.
No, it's a mess.
I'm not going to do anything but smile and openly continue to laugh, because all the people in California that have made fun of me for years, I'm openly enjoying your just outright misery. And then I just want to I want that to be publicly known. I'm glad it's being broadcasted live. I'm enjoying your suffering and infinite stupidity, as I've warned you repeatedly as you mocked me for the past decade. Like, watching you burn your own world down while pissing in your ashes, I couldn't draw more pleasure if I tried. This is definitely the comeuppance, and I'm enjoying my popcorn and every bite of it. It's delicious.
Yeah, I see them trying to lock people in.
More than your tears. It's just too good.
They're going to probably try to lock people into California soon.
Yeah, California is going to fall off into the ocean, either proverbially or literally at this point, because the large business sector is gone. The private equity has left. Whether people say that or not, or agree with that or not, I don't really care what they think. It's gone to Miami. It's gone to Texas. It's gone to Colorado. It's gone to New York. It's gone to Nevada. It's gone to Delaware. It's gone. Tennessee, parts of Tennessee, Franklin mostly, some parts of Nashville. But yeah, it's gone. The part to quote South Park, and it's gone. It's gone. And with the PE left all of the actual equity in tech companies in California, because the whole point of being a tech company in California was you were around all the big tech companies. A lot of them have left. And the ones that haven't left aren't really relevant and aren't really spending money. And the big ones that are spending money aren't spending money in California.
Right. Yeah. And that's, if they have to pay 30 cents a mile, the price of everything is going to shoot through the roof because all of the.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. They haven't seen inflation yet. You're about to, you have to remember the biggest cost of moving a good is transportation.
Right.
And you're about to add a 33 cents a mile charge. You got to remember, diesel fuel is already $4 a gallon.
Right.
They only get 12 miles per gallon, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look that up. Actually, I think that's too generous.
In California, the gas, well, at least in LA and OC, the gas is like $5.50.
Yeah, it's the average MPG. Sorry, it's 5.6 to 6.5 miles per gallon. And so, if you're talking adding 30 cents per mile, yeah, they're not. You're totally right, Eric. They're not coming back. They've taken their money elsewhere a long time ago. And a perfect indicator of that was the fact that they passed an exit tax several years ago to stem the bleeding. Which, by the way, I've openly stipulated for a long time that attempting to charge an exit tax is violation of interstate commerce, because you're attempting to prevent and demotivate people from going from state A to state B. which is no more than what could be equated to a tariff. And so, as I've said repeatedly, California is going to continue to lose. And a perfect example with that is people aren't afraid to pay the exit tax to leave. And the fact that they had to give a 10-year window retroactive application to that shows you how long they've been bleeding people for, which I've said for the longest time has been a long time. People have been leaving not just California, but the country for a long time. We've had the single largest egress of millionaires and billionaires over the past 20 years than we have since inception of the country itself. We have never seen flight of capital at this degree. And I don't blame them. Once you get past, I want to say I advise most clients, I want to say, depending on what business you're in, between $3.5 and $5.5 million, once you exceed that net worth, it is no longer conducive to be an American citizen.
Yeah.
That is my direct advice to them. And it's supported by money, numbers, data, historical action, and statements from members from Treasury who have openly said the same thing. It is no longer conducive to be an American citizen once you typically exceed 5.5 across the board. It's just not in your benefit to be an American citizen. And that's why you see all of them forfeiting their citizenships and picking up their third and fourth and fifth passports.
Yep. You got to follow the money, and it's out of the country.
Follow the money. Where it's going is where you want to be. A perfect example is look at Dubai, Monaco,
Right.
Puerto Rico. People are leaving.
Exactly.
A perfect example I try to get people to understand is if you understand how money works, you understand that's a serious problem. And I'm not talking, serious problem, government's going to shut down. No, I'm like, the entire financial system is going to collapse level serious problem. Because if there is no capital in the system stops working. And a perfect example for that is the commercial banking sector. We currently have 63 banks that are on the verge of collapse. And we're not talking regionals. We're talking major banks.
Yeah, that's pretty insane.
63 banks that are about to collapse. They have reported $517 billion in losses. That's B.
Wow.
It's a B. And to put that into correlation, that's the entire DoD budget.
Aren't a lot of those losses coming from like the mortgage or mortgages?
Yeah, it's a combination of commercial mortgage-backed securities and loans, which is why a lot of the banks have started abandoning certain types of loans entirely. It's why you can't even get. They say you can get, but you can't get most types of small business loans. That's why the SBA just released a new program for business lines of credit. One, because it's too hard to get through the process, and two, they weren't seeing any traction on the other types of business loans outside of the 504. And the 504 was commercial real estate. It was just another form of commercial real estate exposure. It wasn't actually small business lending. If you talk to any actual banker, which I do all the time, the first thing they're going to tell you is they don't like small businesses at all.
Yeah.
Like they like negative small businesses with their bank. And if they could have their way, that's what they would have, is negative small businesses. Now, they'll take the small business owner, but not the small business itself.
Right.
Yeah, like do you foresee like recession in the near future? Because
No, we're in a recession now, and anybody who tells you otherwise is full of shit.
Oh no, I mean
Seems like it.
secession, like Texas seceding.
Oh, they don't have to. They just simply have to tell you we're not paying taxes anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah, they just tell you we're not paying taxes anymore, and boom, whole system collapses. I mean, technically, from a technical perspective, when the Supreme Court denied Texas's right to a Supreme Court hearing when it had a dispute with other states, it had every right to secede from the country at that point. because we did violate Texas's contractual guarantees as part of its joining of the union in the first place, which was that it would have fair and equal representation from a judicial basis. We violated Texas's rights in that regard. Texas was denied its right to court, which it was a federal dispute between other states. And that is the only place that those cases can be heard is by the Supreme Court because it was outside of its district.
Right. And like if Texas secedes, how much of the debt is it going to be liable for, or is it just going to
It's
be
just going
liable
to,
for
why
nothing?
would it pay somebody else's debt? It's just going to leave.
Right.
We would lose California. We would lose the 5th largest economy. Texas became California in terms of economy. People need to understand that. The money that was in California went to Texas. It went to Texas because Texas has a very tax-friendly structure. It's a very business-friendly place. Let me be abundantly clear so that there is no confusion in case there is any. Places that are business-friendly have prosperity. Places that are hostile towards landlords, property owners, asset owners, and employers will fail. Without a shadow of a doubt, they will fail. There has never in the history of the world been a place that was hostile towards asset owners and business owners that did not fail. It has never been the case in recorded history going back 10,000 plus years, and that will not change in previous eras, current eras, or future eras ever. Because statistically speaking, the Pareto principle and Price law are absolutions. People that perform are going to go to places where they have a strategic advantage. They will not operate in the long term in environments that are hostile towards their growth and success. They will leave. If you tell me I have to swim in a vat of acid while treading water, I'm going to get out of the vat of acid because I'm not an idiot.
Right.
That's every performer in every condition you put them in. You want them to be as happy and as comfortable as possible. That's why Dubai is absolutely obliterating people right now. They have an astronomical amount of performance, financially and otherwise, because they are very, very pro-business. They're very, very pro-financially successful individuals. They're very, very pro-opportunity. That's why they're offering golden passports to anybody who has engineering skill sets. They want you there, and they'll pay you an astronomical amount of money to go there. This is what people have failed to continue to understand about America. America wasn't built on immigration. That's a crock of shit. And anybody who's told you otherwise needs to reread history. Because if you actually look into the people that came to America, it wasn't a bunch of poor people from all over the planet that were desperate for a new start. Every one of the people that came to America that were let in, one, could afford a ticket to begin with. Two, they had to have a trade. They had to have a skill set that provided value. We didn't bring a bunch of poor people here. We didn't bring a bunch of farmers and impoverished. We brought a bunch of people here who had a bunch of trade skills. We brought talented people and built an incredible industry on the backs of an astronomical number of skilled people from all over the planet. And we bled the planet dry of other talented engineers, other talented craftsmen, tradesmen, and brought them to us. We became exceptional because we brought exceptional. We only accepted exceptional. We didn't take in the mediocre. And this is the delusion that we currently operate under now. That's why New York is swimming in debt. They're burning $50 billion plus a year taking care of people who provide nothing to the city but a higher crime rate. And that's according to New York's data, not me.
Right.
But it is what it is.
If unfettered immigration was such a positive, then Mexico would just have an open border for Americans to come across.
No,
Like,
no.
hey,
If unfettered immigration was such a positive, Mexico would have open borders with all the other countries around Mexico, and they
right,
don't. Their borders are locked down. The only things that aren't stopped are caravans coming through Mexico to America, and that's because they're offloading their problems. And they know it. That's why all these South American countries allow these caravans through in the first place. They're dumping the people that are putting a burden on their infrastructure to begin with. They don't want those people. They want them gone. That's why they're just letting them walk out of the country. Do you think if these people were successful with large amounts of assets, these countries would just let them walk through without going through immigrations and customs and paying VATs and tariffs on all these goods that they're moving through? Of course not. You can't get on an airplane with more than $10,000 in value without paying a tax when you land somewhere. Hell, I can't do that for Mexico. Do you really think if these people were high value, they would be letting them go without any problems? Without any bill? Without any tax? Without anything? No. They're letting go of a tax bill. That's what they're letting go of. They're letting go of a bad debt. That's what they're letting go of. If these people were high value, they wouldn't let them walk away. Just like California. It would be a crisis for Mexico if they were letting all their high-value personnel leave. They'd have an exit tax because it would get bad enough to where they would have to. The reality is the people that are leaving are making Mexico better because they're gone. They're our problem now, not theirs anymore. They're not paying the social welfare systems anymore. They're not spending as much on crime management anymore. Because now, while they do still have cartels, even the cartels aren't complaining as much. Why? Because the cartels don't have as many mouths to feed. Because when you're left with no options and you're surrounded by a drug and cartel industry, that's where you turn to. And it's an unfortunate reality about poverty. People will do what it takes to survive, including crime. That's why you see increases in crime directly correlated to the number of immigrants that were moved into the area. And it's just a simple reality.
right.
Nobody wants to say that, though. Nobody wants to talk about it. But that's the real reality.
Yeah, that's why I feel like secession is inevitable. One, because the national debt is insurmountable. We can't pay it off. So if Texas splits, or some of the other nations, then they don't have that liability hanging over them.
That's not true. I want to go ahead and correct that assessment. We absolutely can pay it off. We choose not to. We choose not to address the issue. And Warren Buffett said it best, which is if we wanted to solve the national debt issue within 5 minutes, all we have to do is pass a law that says if the country has a GDP budget excess, budget is a budget. What was it? He had specific terms. I'll pull it up real quick because I don't want to misquote him. It was a great saying.
Okay, so if they have no intention of paying it off, and it's another trillion every few like 100 days or so, then why would you want to tether yourself to somebody who's racking up all this debt, but they're never paying it off, and the interest alone is stifling, completely stifling.
Yeah. You just pass a law that says that anytime there is a deficit of more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. I think if we literally just copy pasted this, put it in a standalone bill and forced it through Congress and Senate and then into law, it would solve the problem. Because he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Because if you balance the budget, you start debt service. And as long as you're starting debt service and you can debt service the debt, you will inevitably pay it off. That's an inevitability. That's a mathematical certainty. The question isn't can you, the question is how long will it take you? The thing you also have to remember is right now I think we're spending $700+ billion a year on debt service. As I've warned repeatedly against, it's going to snowball and to a point to where it becomes a race condition. Now, we haven't reached the point yet where it exceeds our total income. That's when it will become completely unmanageable, and that's when it will become catastrophic. But right now, it by itself is 30+% of our total income, if I'm not mistaken. I think total gross right now is like 2.2, 2.4, 2.6 trillion, something like that. Not like gross intake, but net, because the amount of total tax dollars the government collects does not make how much money we actually made in tax revenue, because you have to take into consideration a simple term, the cost of operating Treasury and IRS alone, and those are in extremely high cost bases. I think we spend over $1 trillion a year, one place said, just operating the IRS, collecting the debt.
So what would the tax raise and what would life in general look like for us to be on the path to feasibly pay off the debt?
Oh, it wouldn't be a tax raise. It would be just cost cutting. You would cut DOD, you would cut Medicare, you'd cut Social Security completely, and you would cut Medicaid, and that would pay off the debt.
How many years would you have to do that for? Do you estimate, or is that into perpetuity?
One, because you'd eliminate it, they would just be gone. Those costs would permanently be gone. Yeah, I think the cost of Social Security alone is, I want to say 600-700 billion, something like that. Damn, actually, it's 1.2 trillion now. Oh no, it went up again. It's $1.4 trillion now, calendar year. So yeah, eliminating it would pretty much double the cost of the debt basis. And so fastest way to do that is literally just write them a check for what they got. Have one instance of hyperinflation that's counteracted by the cost basis of burning down the debt. And you literally just give everybody their money back and say, there's no more Social Security. You cancel Social Security. And it's the simplest term.
Okay,
which,
so
it should have never been mandatory to begin with. And it's a pyramid scheme. It's going to fail either way. In 2032, it's going to fail, period.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost failed in 2026, and then again in 2024, and then again in 2028. And they're just kicking the can down the road by continually increasing the age and decreasing the payouts. But the inevitability is A, you're not going to get anywhere near what you paid in, and B, the compounding effects of what you would have gotten versus what you will get is nothing short of laughable. I think my pay-in is $100,000+, $160 at this point, and the amount of money that I will get is like $3,000.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is adorable.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's adorable. Yeah. And that's only for years of credit that you have. And so that's the other catch-22 is what are your years of credit and how many years will you be credited for? The fact that they even track whether you got credit for that year or not tells you that they don't plan on paying you that in perpetuity. They pay you until your credits run out. That's how they plan on doing the new system, the current system. It's not perpetual anymore. It's not just, oh, well, you paid your Social Security, you get it for life. No, that's a common misconception. Yeah. And I've seen that from too many people to think anything otherwise. It's they literally cut you off. There is a cutoff date, and once you go beyond that point, they just stop sending you a check.
Yeah, so it seems like there's no real social safety net anymore. Crazy amount of debt. What's the country we should be looking to move to that has like good leadership and Americans can reasonably get a citizenship in?
Countries that allow you to fail. Any
Okay.
country that allows you to fail, those are the countries that we should be moving to.
Hmm.
I know it's going to sound crazy, but the Malay, what country is Malay with? Is it? I always get these mixed up. I think it's Argentina. But I think it's Javier Malay, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, Javier Malay. He's Argentina. Yeah. Yeah, we should be moving in the same direction as Argentina, which is just obliterating all these government agencies and oversight bodies. Just completely, and then just annihilating all these social programs. In order for, it's just like anything, it's just like a farm. In order for the crop to be healthy, some plants have to die.
Right.
It's just reality.
So was Argentina, were they like a heavily socialist country before? I can't remember their politics.
Extremely socialist. Yeah, extremely socialist. And they went beyond the verge of failure. They did fail, and they've hyperinflated in currency. And they've effectively collapsed as a country. And he was the guy that got elected during a socialist superset because of the fact that they were so socialist that it killed their country. Socialism kills countries. It doesn't do anything else other than kill countries. It doesn't help anyone. And you're not helping the people that you think you're helping by constantly writing them a check. You're not saving them from themselves or from their situation. You're guaranteeing that they die there.
Right. That's why I'm really skeptical about the universal basic income thing.
It's never going to work.
Right.
It's never going to work. And here's why. And I've argued against universal basic income. One, we already tried it in this country twice now. We tried it when we first got here, and we tried it again back in 2020, 2021, 2022, where they forced through a form of universal basic income. And what it directly caused was hyperinflation at never before seen scales. That's why your eggs now cost you $8 a carton instead of $1.
Right.
Oh, and that damage is far from over, by the way. The inflation is still coming. We haven't hit the real inflation numbers yet.
Yeah, I can believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, all we saw so far was the primary immediate response. We haven't gotten to the secondary and our tertiary effects yet. That's still coming over the next 8 more years. That damage hasn't even fully settled yet.
Right.
Now what about gas? What's gas going to look like?
At least $6 a gallon.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like California.
No, that's US wide. Yeah, California is probably going to be around $10 to $12 a gallon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Hawaii is going to be around 15 to 20, typically.
Insane.
Yeah.
And with that gas tax on top of it, then it's going to be pretty much impossible for a lot of people to even get to work.
Well, you're assuming there's going to be work to be had.
Right.
That's the first misconception.
Right.
The thing. Minimum wage is $20 an hour there now. This is again, it gets back to the basic argument of supply and demand. In order for there to be a supply, there has to be a demand. But in order for there to be a demand, there has to be a value. And the value has to be relative to cost. If this pen is a pen and it produces to me $3 of value, you cannot sell me this pen for $3. It has to be less than $3 because then I'm not gaining any value from this pen. I'm giving you $3 and I'm getting a pen. I already have $3. I need a pen, but more importantly, I need the $3 of value that I get from the pen. The pen just represents the capacity to conduct value or to attain value. If your labor is 1 pen, if you charge me $3, fuck your pen. It's that simple. I don't want your pen anymore. Why? Because your pen costs me just as much as the value that you produce. There has to be something in it for me, or I'm going to die from heat death, if nothing else, from inflation. And then -4 to -16% per year, compounding in perpetuity. Not including my 3 to 7 years of losses before I become profitable to begin with. That's a statistical median. This is something that people in California are too stupid to realize. And as I've said repeatedly, is why your state's going to die. Because you can't do basic math because you don't actually understand economics. If you did, your state tax rate wouldn't be 14%. You would understand that if businesses can't make money, they're going to leave. Period. And if you understood anything about small businesses, you would know that the statistical median for small business incomes are between 2 and 8% net. And if you're charging 14, that number is negative. Doesn't take a rocket scientist. Because if the federal numbers are 2 and 8, and that means the state numbers are now -12 to -6. That means they lose money. Now, luckily for you, most small business owners are too stupid to know how to do that math because they're just honest, hardworking people that are too naive and too ignorant to be able to say, I'm losing money every year, year over year, but it's lost during the value of my assets and not actual dollars in my account. So I'm under the delusion that I'm actually making money, when in reality, you're actually robbing me blind in inflation. And I just won't realize that until I go to sell my business and can't, because 90% of all small businesses fail to sell. And then when that happens and my business just closes, I lose my life savings, which I've tied $800,000 to $3 million into over a long period of time. And I just lose 100% of that and discharge that, and I die poor and penniless. And they literally work until they die. And that's the real reality. That's the ugly truth. But that's why California is about to have the biggest shit show they've ever seen. Because you have to remember, if the average person is making $20 an hour, here's my first question for you. What's the point of being a mechanic? If I can go work at Pizza Hut and make $20 an hour, why would I be a mechanic or a nurse?
Right.
It's not going to increase my value. I'm not going to get a pay raise. See, this is the other delusion, is that they think, oh, well, if minimum wage is 20, it's going to force up everybody else's wages. No, it is not. All you're doing is increasing the bottom. Supply and demand didn't change. Increasing minimum wage does not, in fact, fix that number and increase the wages of a nurse or a doctor. Matter of fact, it diminishes the amount of money they make because the operating expenses for the businesses they buy from go up. If you know anything about small businesses, you know your number one cost category is your labor and then your rent. If your cost basis goes up, your prices have to go up or you go out of business. Your second cost category is your rent. And if your landlord's costs go up, your rent has to go up, or the landlord goes out of business, which is what we're seeing now in the collapse of commercial real estate.
Right.
Courtesy of not paying your landlords for 4 years, which they thought was infinitely smart. California, congratulations on destroying your entire real estate sector, which was, by the way, anywhere between 40 to 65% of every person's median income and value. You obliterated every person's net asset worth in California, which, funny enough, actually destroyed your capacity to collect tax dollars on their exit because you obliterated their property value, which was the majority of their holdings. Congrats. You're an idiot, and you played yourself.
Yep, that's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, and on top of that, banks aren't lending, which means you can't get someone to buy your property that's, $800 to $1.7 million because they can't afford the mortgage at the increased interest rate.
Right.
Which they never, contemplated could possibly have any kind of effect. It's almost like you have to meet a DTI standard or something in order to buy a house. It's Not like it's basic industry knowledge or anything. But again, that's also assuming that they know anything about what they're doing in the first place, which is pretty apparent that they don't. Because that was the first thing that somebody would have played out in a war game scenario. Just like what banks do when they do any kind of risk assessments for portfolios. Legally, they're required to do assessments for risk quarterly, usually, depending on the state that they're in. First thing they'll tell you is, okay, what's worst case scenario? Well, interest rates go up. Okay, well then what? Well, then the cost of buying a property goes up. People either won't buy or B, can't sell. Usually both.
Right.
And that's where California finds itself now. People are just dumping properties in California. People are just dumping skyscrapers in New York. I saw one that was selling for $300 million that then turned around and sold for, I think it was $20 million. It was about 1/10 of what its original purchase price was, and 5%, 10% of its original value. Buildings are just being liquidated for anything that they can get.
Yeah, that's crazy. But hey, guys, I gotta drop off. Did y'all have any closing thoughts?
Buy an Audi R8.
Yeah, I wish.
They're not that bad. It's like what is it?
I wish. What about you, Brian? Hey, you got any closing thoughts?
What's that?
You got any closing thoughts?
No, not really.
Yeah, man, I appreciate y'all for stopping on the show. Yeah, I guess if nobody has any closing thoughts, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace.